Texas activists launched signature drive for local marijuana decriminalization ballot measure in Dallas and Lockhart. Kyle Yeager reports. Texas activists are officially collecting signatures to place local marijuana decriminalization initiatives on the November ballot in 2 more cities, Dallas and Lockhart. The groups Ground Game Texas and Texas Cannabis Collective are spearheading the reform efforts, aiming to build on a spate of local decriminalization victories in cities across the Lone Star State. Signature gathering kicked off over the weekend, with advocates circulating petitions welcoming volunteers to help put the issue before voters. Dallas, it's time for our voices to be heard, Ground Game said. Let's pave the way for policy that's not just rational, but necessary. The Dallas measure would prevent police from making arrests or issuing citations for Class A or Class B misdemeanor cannabis possession offenses, unless it's part of a high priority felony investigation for narcotics or violent crime. Further, the measure says Dallas police shall not consider the odor of marijuana or hemp to constitute probable cause for any search or seizure. That's huge. The city manager and chief of police would be required to prepare quarterly reports on the implementation of the policy change, with information about any marijuana possession, arrests, or citations that would be submitted to the Dallas City Council. The Lockhart measure contains much of the same language, including the overall decriminalization policy and cannabis odor rule for law enforcement. It would additionally prevent the city from using local resources to order testing of cannabis products to determine whether they meet the definition of marijuana or hemp as a part of the criminal investigation. Very interesting. Dallas is the 3rd largest city in Texas by population, while Lockhart is a relatively small jurisdiction in the San Antonio region. Meanwhile, voters in Lubbock will get the opportunity to decide on the local decriminalization measure in May, after lawmakers approved a resolution to place it on the ballot after declining to enact on the reform legislatively. Other cities have already passed cannabis decriminalization initiatives, including Austin, Delton, Elgin, Harker Heights, Kylene, and San Marcos, efforts that were largely led by Ground Game. In November, that organization released a report that looked at the impacts of marijuana reform laws. It found that the measure will keep hundreds of people out of jail, even if they've led to blowback from law enforcement in some cities. The initiatives have also driven voter turnout by being on the ballot, the report said. Another cannabis decriminalization effort that went before voters in San Antonio last May was overwhelmingly defeated, but that proposal also included unrelated provisions to prevent enforcement of abortion restrictions. Advocates have faced issues in certain jurisdictions where voters approved decriminalization. Shortly after voters in Harker Heights approved their measure, the city council overturned the ordinance over concerns that it conflicted with state law, but activists collected signatures for another initiative and successfully repealed the repeal last May. The Kylene City Council temporarily paused the implementation of its local voter-approved ordinance, arguing there were legal concerns that the lawmakers needed to sort through before giving it their approval, which they eventually did. But last April, Bell County filed a lawsuit challenging their policy. At the state level last year, the Texas House of Representatives passed a series of bills to decriminalize marijuana, facilitate expungement, and allow chronic pain patients to access medical cannabis as an opioid alternative. But they ultimately stalled out in the Senate, which has been a theme for cannabis reform measures in the conservative legislature over several sessions. The House passed similar cannabis decriminalization proposals during the past 2 legislative sessions in 2021 and 2019. Separately, a Texas Democratic senator brought the issue of marijuana legalization to the Senate floor last May, seeking to attach to unrelated resolutions an amendment that would have allowed Texans to vote on ending prohibition at the ballot box. But the symbolic proposal was ultimately shut down. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick agreed to another member's point of order, deeming the cannabis amendment not germane to the broader legislation. Nearly 3 in 4 Texas voters, 72%, support decriminalizing marijuana, according to the University of Texas and Texas Politics Project's poll in 2022. More than half, 55%, meanwhile, said they were in favor of broader legalization. 17% said it shouldn't be legal at all. And that's the story out of Texas. Very interesting. Sorry about my whole camera situation here, guys. Just doing with what I can with these California roads. That's Saman Razani reporting for High at 9 News from the 280 in the Bay. What do you guys think about this? There's a lot of interesting stuff. Mainly the probable cause with the odor that's in this bill. I think that's really fantastic, especially for anyone in Texas. I mean, I know personally I've I've had to deal with law enforcement many times because I've smelled like cannabis. So what do you all think about the future of legalization in Texas?
Well, first of all, Saman, this bill ain't going anywhere, so Dan Patrick's going to kill it. He's a weed killer. He's like Roundup.
Well, Jason, you got to get your boy Greg Abbott up there and tell him to calm down his lieutenant governor.
We have had those conversations, and those conversations will continue, but nonetheless.
So when you say kill it, you're saying they're just going to continue the Texas legacy when it comes to the death penalty?
Sure.
No, they're just going to
Sure.
expand that to cannabis too.
Right.
They're gonna electrify it. They're not even gonna vape it. They're just gonna put it in the electric chair.
Hotbox them.
Oh boy.
I mean, I was just down in Texas a week ago, and I gotta say, first of all, the two sunshine states totally excite me. Texas and Florida. It's cool that we're covering both. Thank you to the other correspondents who chose those articles from those states today. I gotta say, every time I go to Texas, I like it more.
Yeah.
I mean, I really, really do. I went to San Antonio. I went to Austin again. The other thing I noticed was that they had a lot of dispensaries. And these dispensaries, I went in and played dumb, which isn't a stretch for me. And I was like, wait, hold on, what's going on here? And they had a shelf for pet CBD products. They had flour. They were showing me COAs from Oregon. And I asked the lady at the counter, and she said, it's kind of a gray area. And I know darn well the only gray area is on my temples because of my age. But I'm excited about all of the things the future holds for Texas when the tumbleweeds aren't just the things that are blowing down the freeway, but the things that I'm blowing on my free time. And I think Texas,
we don't need to hear about that. We don't need to hear about what you're blowing in your free time.
Yeah. No, we don't need to hear about none of that,
on the gray hairs.
I'm blowing clouds, not guys. Okay?
Let you tell it, bro. Let you tell it, Yarrow.
Hanging out with Matt Gates.
I hear you on the gray area, though. I turned 37 tomorrow, and I got my first gray beard hair. So shout out the grays. But that's but look. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mary. No, but here's the thing about the whole Texas thing. It's like, yeah, duh, they should decriminalize because they're already selling THCA in these dispensaries under the auspice that it's hemp. That's the bullshit. That's the whole entire thing that drives me nuts, okay, is that we're spending all this effort and all this time just to distract and just as a complete misdirection of what's happening. We're wasting our time, our efforts of everybody in the cannabis industry. And it's savage because there's these really intelligent people on the other side of that are driving that conversation and promoting the hemp-derived Delta 9 and the Delta 8 converted leaders. It's terrible. It's like, get your shit together, guys. Have a little dignity, have a little respect for your fellow compadres here, and let's push one narrative. Let's push one thing, which is the free THC, decriminalize, deschedule, and let's move forward. If we don't, we're going to be stuck. We're going to be stuck in this vicious cycle for years to come, and it's not going to help any of us.
None of those options are even on the table with this bill.
Jason, that's because no one's pushing for the options, bro. If people get together and speak with one voice, we'll have those options on every bill in every state and every legislature. That's how it'll go, but it's not. Because why? Because there's still money to be made, and as long as there's money to be made, there's going to be people doing that. We're capitalists. We're ingenious entrepreneurs. That's actually the problem.
And I love Texas, but it's a little sad that the plant is freer than women's reproductive choices.
Oh boy. I'm not touching that. I'm going to shout out to Sam Romaine out there. He says derivatives aren't evil. What do you say about that, Simone?
Sam, if you could grow the plant out of the ground normally and enjoy it, is that better than using a synthetic chemical conversion process to turn it into what you want to turn it into? You answer that question.
Oh boy.